I was a salvager. That was my life. Find the wrecks, pull the valuable parts, and sell them to the stations that drifted in the black. My home was a ship called the Last Light, a rust bucket held together by hope and desperation. We worked the rim, the edge of colonized space, where the law was weak and the dangers were strong. The signal came on a dead frequency, a distress call, old, repeating. It wasn't from a station or a ship. It came from a planetoid called Persephone's Grave, a ball of rock and ice on the edge of a dying star. The record said a research vessel, the Void Seeker, had gone missing there 50 years ago. The pay for its data core was more than I'd made in a decade. Enough to get my crew real food, real medicine, a real life. My crew was small. Jenna, my co-pilot, had been with me since the start. She was quiet, steady, the only person I trusted. And old Manus, our engineer, a man who knew more about dying ships than anyone alive. We were a family, not by blood, but by survival. We entered the grave's orbit without warning. One moment, empty space. The next, the planet filled our view, a pale, scarred marble. As we descended, the Last Light began to complain. Instruments flickered. A low hum filled the hull, a sound I'd never heard before. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It felt like something was listening. "I don't like this," Jenna said, her voice tight. "It's just a salvage run," I replied, but my hands were cold on the controls. The Void Seeker wasn't on the surface. It was inside it. We found a fissure, a canyon carved deep into the ice, and followed it down. The walls glowed with a faint, internal light by casting long shadows that seemed to move. We landed on a shelf of crystal just outside the wreck. The ship was torn open, its metal twisted like paper. There was no sign of the crew. "Stay with the ship," I told Jenna. "Keep the engines warm." Manus and I suited up and went inside. The air was cold, but we could breathe. The Void Seeker was a tomb. We found the data core quickly, but something else called me deeper. A pull, like a thread attached to my chest. I told Manus to take the core back to the ship. He looked at me, his old eyes full of worry. "Don't be long," he said. I walked into the heart of the wreck. The walls of the ship gave way to the ice of the planetoid. The hum was louder now, a vibration I could feel in my bones. The light from the ice grew brighter, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. And then I saw it. A chamber, perfectly smooth, not carved by nature. In the center was a shape. At first, my mind tried to make it simple. A statue, a piece of wreckage. But as I stepped closer, it changed. It was a creature. Her body was like liquid glass, flowing and solid at the same time. Light moved through her, not reflected, but born from within. She had no face, just a smooth, oval head that turned towards me as I entered. She wasn't standing. She was floating, a hair's breadth above the icy floor. Her form was tall and slender, with long, trailing limbs that seemed to end in points of pure, white light. I should have run, but the pull was too strong. It was in my mind now, a gentle, insistent pressure. "You came," I heard. Not with my ears, but inside my skull. Her voice was like the hum of the ship, a deep, unresonant note that felt more real than my own thoughts. "I was looking for the wreck," I said, my own voice sounding small. "You were looking for this." A section of her body flowed outward, and a crystal, no larger than my fist, floated towards me. It pulsed with the same light as her. "What is it? What is required?" I reached out and took it. The moment my fingers touched the crystal, a jolt went through me. Not pain, but a deep sense of recognition. It was like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was lost. She didn't move, but I felt her attention, sharp and focused. I took the crystal back to the last light. We were going to sell it. It was valuable, rarer than any data core. It would change everything. We were 3 days out from the grave when the first dream came. I saw her, floating in that ice chamber, and I felt that pull again. When I woke, my hand was reaching for the air, and the place where I'd touched the crystal was warm. Then the ship started to fail. Not all at once. First, the comms. Then, the navigation. It was as if something was draining the energy from the last light, pulling it away. Jenna looked at me. "It's that thing you brought on board." I didn't want to believe her, but I knew. The crystal was in my quarters, pulsing gently. I held it, and the ship's lights flickered. I put it down, and they steadied. It was feeding. We tried to throw it out. Manus took it to the airlock, but when he opened the inner door, he froze. He stood there for a full minute, staring at it. Then he closed the door and walked away. When I asked him why, he just shook his head. "I couldn't," he whispered. "I didn't want me to." That's when the real fear started. It wasn't just the crystal, it was her. She was calling to me, and I was the only one who could hear it. The closer we got to a station, the worse the dreams became. I started spending all my time in my quarters, holding the crystal, feeling that hollow warmth spread through my chest. "You're changing," Jenna said one day. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. "You don't sleep, you don't eat. You just sit in there with that thing." I looked at her. I knew her face. I knew her name. But the feeling behind it, the years of trust, the friendship, was gone. There was only a memory of it. "I'm fine," I said. But I wasn't. I was forgetting who I was. The ship finally died a week later. No power, no heat. We were drifting in the black, closer to Persephone's grave than to any station. It was as if the last light had been pulled back by an invisible hand. "We have to go back," Manus said, his voice broken. "It's the only way." I looked at the crystal. It was pulsing faster now. I understood. It wasn't just a piece of her. It was a tether. And I had to follow it. Jenna tried to stop me. "Don't go," she said, grabbing my arm. "We can find another way. We can figure this out." I looked at her hand on my arm and felt nothing. No warmth, no connection. Just a hand holding me back. I gently pulled away. "I don't remember," I said, and the look on her face was something I knew I should feel. But I couldn't. I took a small shuttle, the crystal, and went back. The trip was a blur. The hum was constant now, a song that filled my mind, erasing everything else. And I landed the shuttle at the same fissure and walked into the ice. She was there, waiting. The chamber was brighter now, the light from her form filling the space. She floated towards me, and for the first time, I saw the room around her. The ice was not empty. There were shapes within it, frozen figures, human shapes, their faces peaceful. I recognized the uniforms of the Void Seeker crew, and others, older, from ships I didn't know. She had been here a long time. "You are changing," she said, her voice in my mind. Her form shifted, flowing closer until she was inches from me. I could see the light moving within her, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. "So are you," I said. My voice was a whisper. She paused, then she said, "Yes." She touched my chest. I expected cold, but there was none. There was only the pull, the same as before, but deeper. I felt something inside me shift, something essential, something that had been me, begin to flow out of me and into her. I didn't resist. I couldn't. Was it always this? I asked. She didn't answer. She just leaned closer, and her form opened, and I stepped into the light. I don't remember the days after. I know I went back to the last light one last time. Jenna and Manus were huddled in the cockpit trying to get any signal. They looked at me as I entered. I was holding a new crystal, smaller than the first. "It's for the ship," I said, my voice flat. I placed it on the console. The lights flickered, then came on. The hum returned, but softer. Jenna stared at me. "What happened to you?" I looked at her, and I saw a stranger, a woman I had once known, but no longer. I felt nothing. "You're fine now," I said, "so the ship will get you home." I turned and left. I walked back to the shuttle. I didn't look back. I didn't feel anything at all. I went back to her. The cave was my home now. She was my purpose. Each time I returned, she took more, and each time I stood closer. The cold didn't hurt. The silence was peaceful. The figures in the ice no longer seemed like victims. They seemed like pieces of a whole, just like me. One cycle, I felt nothing. I walked into the chamber, and she was there. I stood before her, and she did not reach for me. She simply floated, her light pulsing. "There's nothing left to take," I said. She moved closer. Her form flowed around me, not to take, but to hold. For the first time, I felt no pull, no loss, only her. I stepped forward. There was no distance between us. My form, my body, began to change. My skin grew cold, then began to crystallize. The light from her entered me, and I understood. I hadn't been returning because I had to. I had been returning because there was nowhere else left for me. Behind me, the last light drifted away, carrying Jenna and Manus to safety. They were alive, warm, free. But that world no longer had anything to do with me. Here, in the ice, with the light moving through me, I was complete. She did not speak again. Neither did I. And this time, I did not leave. I stood beside her, my hand resting on the ice where her form ended and mine began. I could feel the other shapes in the walls, the long history of those who had come before. And I knew, with a certainty that went beyond thought, that others would come again. A ship would drift too close. A signal would lead someone here. And I would be here, unwaiting to take what was required. The hum filled me. The light was in my veins. I was no longer the man who had come to salvage a wreck. I was part of the grave now. And somewhere, far away, the last light would reach a station. Jenna would tell her story. The crystal I gave her would pulse in a cargo hold, waiting, calling. But that was not my concern. My concern was the quiet, the cold, and the next one who would walk into my chamber, asking for something they didn't understand. I would be here. Always.